Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Somebody at ESPN owes the city of Atlanta an apology because according to the so-called experts in Bristol, Connecticut, the Falcons don't just have a mediocre roster, they have one of the 4 worst rosters in the entire National Football League, tied for 29th place. Bottom 5. Below teams nobody even talks about. And the wildest part? The very same network, just weeks earlier, said the Falcons have one of the best skill position groups in football. So which is it, ESPN? Are the Falcons a laughingstock, or are they sitting on a loaded weapon that could blow up the entire NFC South? Today we're breaking down the stunning contradiction. The 3 men who could make Atlanta the league's best comeback story, and the blueprint that one bold insider says could turn this so-called bottom feeder into a playoff team. Buckle up, Falcons fans. This one gets messy. Let's start with the gut punch. In late June, ESPN dropped its full roster rankings for every team in the league, and the Atlanta Falcons landed dead last among the bottom 5, tied with the Arizona Cardinals for 29th overall. For a fan base that has spent years being told their team is talented but underachieving, this ranking hit different. This wasn't they need one more piece. This was your roster is one of the worst constructed in professional football. And naturally, the internet did what the internet does, it exploded. Falcons fans flooded comment sections, radio shows lit up, and even the most cynical, hardened Atlanta football analysts had to stop and ask, is this fair, or is ESPN just trolling for clicks? Here's the thing. Even the people who are toughest on this Falcons roster, the ones who've spent years pointing out its flaws, are drawing the line at bottom 5. Because when you actually dig into why ESPN might be this low on Atlanta, and yes, the defense said goodbye to a wave of proven veterans, big departures at safety, receiver, edge rusher, cornerback, and replaced them with a group of unproven, prove-it players nobody outside of Atlanta has heard of. But here's what ESPN's cold, spreadsheet-driven rankings conveniently ignore: talent. Actual, game-breaking talent. Because buried in that same ESPN universe, on that same network, a completely different analyst dropped a completely different verdict. Just 2 weeks before the roster rankings bombshell, ESPN's own skill position rankings crowned the Falcons' offensive weapons as a top 4 group in the entire NFL. Not top 10, not top 15, top 4. Someone in Bristol clearly isn't talking to their coworkers down the hall, because you cannot have one of the 4 worst rosters in football while simultaneously fielding one of the 4 best collections of playmakers. Something doesn't add up, and that contradiction is exactly where this story gets interesting. At the center of it all are 3 men who could single-handedly rewrite the entire narrative around this franchise: Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Atlanta has poured premium draft capital into this trio for 5 straight years, and last season, for the first time, all 3 flashed the ceiling everyone always talked about. Bijan Robinson was named the #1 running back in football by NFL executives, a true 3-down monster who can shred a defense on the ground or through the air. Drake London, when healthy, was playing like a top 5 wide receiver in the entire league. And Kyle Pitts had arguably the best season of his career, good enough to earn second-team All-Pro honors and a brand-new contract extension that just landed this week. Individually, these 3 are terrifying. Together, that's the multi-million-dollar question. Because here's the dirty secret nobody wants to say out loud: this Falcons offense has never actually gotten peak Bijan, peak Drake, and peak Pitts in the same season at the same time. It has always been one or two of them carrying the load, while the third either battled injury or got buried in the target share. Kyle Pitts' 2 best statistical seasons, his rookie year and last season, Both happen to be the exact years Drake London had the least impact on the offense, either because he wasn't on the roster yet or because he was hurt for half the year. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And it's the single biggest riddle this coaching staff has to solve if the Falcons want to turn loaded roster into playoff team. So, how do they do it? Believe it or not, the blueprint might already exist, and it's sitting in Cleveland's very recent history. Head coach Kevin Stefanski ran this exact experiment back in 2022 with the Browns, and the parallels to this year's Falcons are almost eerie. That Cleveland team featured a dominant workhorse running back in Nick Chubb, playing at the absolute peak of his powers. They had just added a brand new number 1 wide receiver, Amari Cooper, to elevate the passing attack. And their tight end, David Njoku, quietly put together a top 10 season that flew under the radar. Sound familiar? Swap in Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, and you've basically got the same formula, except Atlanta's version might be even more explosive. Because unlike Chubb, Bijan is a legitimate receiving threat out of the backfield, capable of putting up serious yardage through the air on top of 1,500 rushing yards. If the coaching staff can get even a modest step forward from Drake London and simultaneously unlock a top 10 season from Kyle Pitts, something very achievable based on the flashes we saw last year, this offense has the ingredients to be one of the most dangerous units in the league. But, and this is a big but, that 2022 Cleveland team, the one Atlanta is essentially trying to recreate, it didn't make the playoffs. It finished 7-10. And the reason wasn't the offense. It was two things: a defense that collapsed under pressure and repeatedly blew fourth-quarter leads, and a rookie kicker who missed critical field goals in games that mattered most. Cleveland was 2-6 in one-score games that season, a brutal, unlucky, or maybe just undercooked record in close contests. If they'd simply performed at a league average rate in those nail-biters, that team finishes 9-8 and probably sneaks into the playoffs. This is where the story bends back in Atlanta's favor. Because unlike that 2022 Browns team, the Falcons aren't walking into this season with a shaky, unproven defensive coordinator or a rookie kicker learning on the job. One of the most accurate kickers in the entire NFL over the last several years, a stone-cold professional who almost never misses indoors. That's the exact opposite problem Cleveland had. Suddenly, those close losses that used to define Atlanta's disappointing seasons could start flipping into wins. Add it all up, and you get a fascinating tug-of-war between two very different visions of this Falcons team. On one hand, you've got a roster with a rock-bottom floor, a team that, if the quarterback battle goes sideways, the offensive line can't hold up, and the young defensive pieces flop, could genuinely finish among the worst teams in football, just like ESPN predicted. On the other hand, you've got a roster with a sky-high ceiling, a team loaded with elite, top-4 caliber playmakers, a defense built in the image of a championship-level scheme, and a kicker who never misses, capable of running the table against the league's weaker opponents and stealing wins against the tougher ones. Split the difference between that nightmare scenario and that dream scenario, and you land somewhere around 9 wins and 8 losses, which, in a wide-open, mediocre NFC South, might be more than enough to steal the division crown. So who's right? ESPN's cold algorithm that says the Falcons are one of the worst-built rosters in football? Or the other side of ESPN that says Atlanta is sitting on a top-4 collection of offensive talent? The truth is, both can be true at the same time, and that's exactly what makes this Falcons season one of the most fascinating storylines in the entire NFL heading into the year. This is officially a prove-it season for Atlanta. Prove it for the quarterback competition. Prove it for the retooled offensive line. Prove it for a defense full of names casual fans have never heard of. And most importantly, prove it for the front office that bet premium draft picks and now premium contracts on the idea that Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts can finally dominate together instead of taking turns. If it all comes together, the Falcons don't just prove ESPN wrong, they make the entire league regret ever doubting them, and Atlanta finally exercises years of frustration with a genuine playoff run. If it falls apart, ESPN's brutal ranking ages like fine wine, and the Falcons find themselves picking near the top of next year's draft instead. Either way, this is a team and a story you cannot afford to look away from this season. So here's the real question for you. Do you think ESPN got it right, or are they about to eat their words when the Falcons prove them wrong? Drop your prediction in the comments, 9-8, worse or better. Let us know what record you think Atlanta finishes with this year. And if you enjoyed breaking down this Falcons roller coaster with us, do us a favor, smash that like button, drop a comment with your hottest take, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a single update on the Atlanta Falcons all season long. We'll see you in the next one.